Hi, my name is Harris. I'm one of your podcast hosts. I'm also a lawyer at Treadstone Law. For most Canadians, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, a lawyer is the last thing on their mind. That's unfortunate because lawyers play a vital role in the process. But what choices do Canadians have? Lawyers can be very expensive. Well, Treadstone Law offers resources to Canadians so they have access to the information they need. Whether you sign up for a live workshop or a mailing list, we cover topics to help you make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes. It's advice you can start using today, and best of all, it's free. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click the link below to get access right now. If you're looking to retain Treadstone Law, it's never been easier. Our entire process is online. From completing the retainer agreement to your signing appointment, everything is done from the comfort of your own home. We're your digital lawyers. The best part of it is that you don't pay anything when you're retaining our firm. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click on the link below to retain us right now. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. Today on my podcast, I have Melissa Taylor. Melissa is a real estate investor and real estate success specialist. She works with individuals and families who are curious or determined about buying and selling and struggle with knowing when the right time is to buy and sell, wanting the most for their money with the least amount of difficulty. What sets her apart from other realtors is that she invests in her clients before she ever asks them to invest in her. She always provides a plan for her clients to reach their personal goals within their time frame. As a result, her clients gain clarity and understanding, which translates into confidence and success. Welcome to the podcast, Melissa.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's a
Awesome,
pleasure
Harris.
having you. I mean, I want to jump right into it. I know for
Good.
those of you who are listening, I'm just going to say from the beginning, I've worked with Melissa and her team. They come highly recommended. Some of the most personable realtors that I've kind of come across. So I'm just going to say that right out of the gate. Really love working with the entire team. Really love talking to Melissa as well. So if anybody is looking to buy and sell, definitely reach out to the team. I'm going to have their contact information below. So jumping into the podcast, Melissa, I see that you've got like a rich experience, successful team. You've been in the industry. You're a veteran. You're part of a very successful team, and you built yourself, and then you're part of a bigger team that's pretty successful in its own right. How did you get into being a realtor? Is it something that you knew growing up? You know what? If I did something, I was going to be a real estate agent. Was it something that you kind of fell into? What was it that got you into the industry?
It's so interesting. And, I love talking to people and about my experience, because a lot of, when you listen to people, they usually want to really tell their successes, right? And
Mm,
I can honestly tell you that every success of mine has come out of a pit of despair or a huge change where decisions had to be made. I
yeah.
mean, if you want real talk, I can tell you real talk. I love the name of this podcast because this is my life, right? And actually, no, I hate to burst any bubbles. And that's one of the first things I always say. I did not dream of being a realtor, and this was my life's mission.
Yeah.
I was actually, running a family resort that we owned for over 36 years. And I was running it for the last 17 years. And everyone involved decided they wanted to sell. Everyone involved except me. And I was like, what possibly could I do? And so real estate I knew that I was already servicing a lot of people. I was helping people in the job that I had in the career. And now I was at a career change. I had a bunch of little kids, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? And I could train and go to school and get that done and sort of in a smooth transition attempt to do it. But that said, I will tell you, I, like probably tens of thousands of other people, had a very different view of real estate
Yeah.
when I started. Like,
Yeah.
everyone thinks there's a few myths about real estate agents. One is that they're rich. Let me tell you, they're not rich. One, and the other one is that it's really easy, that we're just, all we are is a tool, really. We're a needed tool to turn the key. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Not a good invested realtor that wants to affect people's lives,
Yeah.
right? that wants to, one of my, what, look, and I get chills when I say this, because one of the things that made me fall in love with real estate was that I wasn't just a tool to turn a key. I could have impact on people's lives. One of our biggest things, and I mean, I only created the team, I actually created it in the beginning of COVID, July 1st, 2020. Why? I have no idea. Ask up there, but I did, and it's grown to such an amazing thing right now. But our main focus is to empower people. I coach also, Harris. So I coach real estate agents actually internationally now. I coach agents in Vegas and Ontario and BC, everywhere. But one of the things I really try to impart is if you really want to be an effective realtor, the houses, and realtors hate when I say this because, anyone can put the house on MLS and sell it. Like, we're trying to make it magic, and it's not magic, right? If if you want the base minimum and below average service, we got lots of people who can help you. Right? But it's when you dig deeper and I always say we speak real estate and the public speaks English. And so we get used to using, I'm sure it's the same in your industry, right? You get used to using a lot of industry words. You'll listen to the news and they'll talk about inventory's high and inventory's low. And we look at it as these are people's homes. It's not inventory, right? It's homes. And it means a lot to people. It defines, for some people, it defines success. For some people, it defines family. Like it means something differently for everybody. And one of our goals, we have a lot, but they're very clear. And one is that we want to educate as we go on. So our focus isn't always on who wants to buy and sell. It's who feels stuck, who's hiding underneath that rock, really feeling like, listen, if I hear this once, I hear it 10 times a day. My kid is never going to afford to get in the market. He's never going to be able to buy a house. Have you heard that?
Yeah. It's number one complaint. Everybody feels like, you know what? My kid's going to be living with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that said, we are seeing a lot of families combine now because of the economy, but we'll talk about that later. But really, there are so many options that can happen in order for people to get that. But it really starts at the beginning. So we don't waste our time. Like some realtors say, you're wasting your time with people who aren't ready to buy and sell. I said, no, I'm helping to build empowered, strong people who can make choices to get what they want in life. That's what we as a team really do, right? So just exposing them to the options that they may not know about. I don't know about you, Harris, but in financial trouble, and trust me, I've been there. That's for a whole nother podcast.
I think everybody's been there at one point or another.
Exactly. You don't really run out into the streets and say, hey, look at me. I'm about to go in foreclosure. You tend to turtle. You tend to go in home. So all of these seminars that people are putting on, you might get a few of them there, but a lot of people feel embarrassed. They feel shame. They feel like they're the only ones going through this. So the last thing they want to do is reach out for help. And those are the people we seek because there's so much to do before it gets to foreclosure or renting for the rest of my life or living with my parents for the rest of my life. Yeah. It's really important to be able to know what the options are. And that's really what our call is like, we just want to help people develop a plan, whatever that plan looks like. And many people, we start right at the bottom. Like I have no savings. I don't know what is land transfer tax. I have no idea what any of this is. Right? By the way, I asked that question too. What it's for.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Toronto, I sometimes wonder myself, but because I see the amount going in and it's twice as much, it's pretty insane. I mean, you've said a lot, and I just wanted to unpack a little bit some of it, or at least put some context to it. I do believe, for example, firstly, those individuals that you kind of said in the beginning where kind of there's thinking that realtors don't have a place. If somebody feels that, I think they've just been in touch with the wrong realtors. Yes. The fact that you have that experience makes you think that realtors, as well as a lot of other professionals within the industry, are there to protect you. If you don't feel safe, if you don't feel comfortable, you're working with the wrong professional and you need to find something else. It's all about,
100%.
like I look at, and I'm not saying, for example, I'm not saying that any realtors or whatever are just listing it or whatever. I feel like every realtor may have a different way of conducting themselves, and that's fine. They may have a different client base. So if an individual, if a consumer, if a Canadian is out there saying, hey, you know what, realtors don't really add any kind of value, well, you haven't found the right realtor for yourself, because you're looking for certain things and you need to feel safe in that entire process. And a realtor is definitely going to be helping you, because without a doubt, for the sell side, I know that statistically speaking, and I speak from my own experience, realtors will get you a higher price than you would get yourself, because a lot of people think that they can try to sell it themselves. You can, and you think you're saving money on the commission, but more often than not, majority of the times, vast majority of the times, you're getting a lower sale price, just because it's not that how the industry works, how negotiations are done. There's how the contract's filled out. There's so many things that are involved in that entire process, that if you think that you could do it yourself, it's a very naive approach to it. And statistically, you can look online, you're not setting yourself up for success. It's just, and I see it all the time, because I've seen individuals who have closed transactions themselves. It's, well, I didn't know this was going to happen. I don't know that was going to happen. I don't know this was a contingency. I don't know this was a condition or whatever, because they don't know how to read the contract. They don't know how to read the conditions. They don't know how to read what's going to happen, what's the process. I know that they're thinking, okay, well, this is the price, but they don't know everything else in the contract, right? They don't know what conditions for financing, for home inspection, if there's any other conditions, warranties that you're signing off, what's the base of the contract itself. Like, people just don't understand.
Does
So
HST apply? So many things.
yeah.
And I just want to add something about what you said, because it's directly related to what you said.
Yeah.
You're right. People can sell it. People can sell their house 100%. You guys, like, we're not saying you're stupid. You know how to sell and take money. But the problem is, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the equity that, like, our job when it comes to the financial part is to protect and get as much of the equity, which is, and people, here we go again with industry language. A lot of people don't understand what equity is, and it's the difference between what you purchase for and what you could possibly get for that home. And they take what they think is a good price, but they have no idea how much equity. I don't know about you, but I want to know that I'm getting absolute most out of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's where a good realtor definitely pays off for themselves and more. It's not just their commission, they're paying off for more, because I've seen scenarios where I've had home buyers trying to sell themselves, and they get an offer and the offer expires in 3 hours, but they're like, well, it's an offer, but it's not what I wanted. And so they're afraid that, you know what, they don't want to counter, because they just don't know what's going on. They don't know how to do anything, right? So they accept it. And afterwards they realize, you know what, if they had a proper realtor on their side, that individual would manage their expectations and say, hey, listen, you know what, this is a great offer, but we're going to get 30 more of these, because they understand the market. They're in the industry. They're not only have the experience themselves, but they're surrounded by other realtors, and they're learning through all of that experience. So if you're part of a good team, you're learning from all of that, and you're coming in and you have a goal that you have in mind. You know what the price is. You know what the value is. If you know your value, you're not going to budge. Whereas if you don't, and you're thinking, you know what, instead of thinking of what the value is, I'm trying to save some kind of money, it's what's called like penny wise, pound foolish. You're just not like thinking straight.
And, you know, I love that you use the word value, Because this is another thing, I find, and you are as well in your industry, we're interpreters, right? Like
Yeah.
we know our industry, or we better know our industry like the back of our hand,
Yeah.
but we understand the people in front of us may not. And so it's our job to interpret what these things mean. And if you have no interpreter and you're dropped in the middle of something, you're going to say yes or no to something that maybe could have been a big, big mistake. We talk about worth and value. And I always say, and this is a great one. I speak to clients all the time and they're like, my home is worth more than Johnny's home. It just
Mm.
sold down the road and it's worth more, and I ask them, that's a great question because everybody wants that. What's the difference between what is worth? How is worth
Yeah.
determined? And we use, even ourselves sometimes, value and worth interchangeably, but to understand that worth is what a buyer's willing to pay.
Yeah.
What a buyer is paying, that's the worth. The value comes in when you're doing upgrades. And this is another great thing. You should be talking to a realtor long before you put your house on the market.
Yeah.
I've seen this too many times where people put a ton of money into places that aren't going to get them any more money for the property, or vice versa. They put money in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So, and the value comes from when you do the upgrades, depending on what upgrades they are, they add value. So your home is more valuable because you've done these, but the worth may or may not change depending on what the buyers are currently selling. No one has a crystal ball, but we sure have, like we on our team, like every single week we're working and sharing. We all work because we cover a huge area. Like we cover basically from Huntsville all the way down to Mississauga. Like
Mm.
that's kind of our area, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but you have to understand what the worth is going to be. It may not be just because you added that value, it might not add any more worth. And we look at trends every single week across that whole area as a group, and we share it with each other. What are the trends? Because we want to be able to anticipate. We can't predict, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can predict. If a financial advisor is telling you they can predict, they're lying. Unless it's about your spending, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah. Yeah.
but for sure, but seeing those trends, that is what helps people do what they need to do when they need to do it. And I know we're going to talk about today part of that between do I buy or sell? It's the age old question of real estate, right? But looking at trends, following those trends, really being on top of them and understanding what could happen,
Yeah.
that leaders anticipate. And you definitely want a leader in a realtor as well.
Yeah, and it's like what people don't also realize is it's like the Wayne Gretzky quote. I'm full of quotes today. Okay,
I love it.
he says, I don't skate to where the puck is. I'm skating to where the puck is going." Right, and you need a Wayne Gretzky on your side to be able to know where the puck is going. And there's a lot of implied knowledge that he has in that quote, right? It's you see where the puck is coming from, you see where it's going, and you have the ability to get there. There's a lot of judgment there. And if you're in the industry, you are supposed to, you may not know 100%. Like you said, nobody has a crystal ball. But you have the experience to understand where it's going. Secondly, what I found, like my dad says this all the time to me. He says that if you're an idiot, even when you're right, you're wrong. And if you're wise, even when you're wrong, you're right. Because an idiot could get things right. And I'm not calling anybody an idiot, but you could guess. And just because you got it right doesn't mean that you know how you got it right and what's there and what's happening and all these contingencies there. But if you have the wisdom and understand the market, even when you're wrong, you've got like the universals down, the generals down. So you understand how it was wrong and you can quickly correct yourself. So that's why I find like you need to have trusted advisors. And I know I'm saying a lot of stuff on realtors. It's the same issue with lawyers. I feel like a lot of people come in and they say, hey, you know what, you guys aren't doing anything. You're just doing, like, if you're buying, you're just doing a title search and that's it. So I always say, hey, listen, if you think I'm only doing, well, title search has a lot involved in it, right? So definitely you want to find somebody who could do a title search, but that's not the only reason why you want a lawyer. Things can go wrong. They go wrong all the time. You want somebody there who can correct it. So if something's going wrong from the sales side, on the other side's party, you can push back. Somebody who can work with the realtor, the mortgage brokers involved, everybody works together to make sure you close that transaction. that's more important now than it's ever been before, because there's the deals that we're seeing are so difficult.
Harris, you know, this is something, and it just blows my mind that people don't do this. And this is the thing. You aren't just interested in the realtor in front of you. You want to
Mm,
know who that realtor has. We have formed very tight, as you know, relationships
yeah,
with professionals. Harris is someone I can call at any time and I'm going to get an answer. I have a relationship like that. We have mortgage brokers who are the same, and we aren't silos. We
yeah,
are working together. We are a team. And
yeah,
that, but not all lawyers are built that way. Not all realtors are built that way, and not all mortgage brokers. You need to find someone not only who has a team of realtors, but who understands that because one of the things we always say is communication, right? Just as an aside,
yeah,
look, anything that's fallen apart in your life, it's because of communication.
yeah,
I guarantee that. And here more than ever, and like you said, things shift. Things shift. And if you don't have am I allowed to say kick ass on here? I don't know,
sure,
but
yeah,
okay. I said it. If you don't have a kick ass realtor and understand what that means with a kick ass lawyer and mortgage broker who have committed. I mean, as soon as that's done, actually, we communicate before even the offer is written sometimes. But once the offer is written, there is a chain that goes out between myself, the lawyer, and the mortgage broker. So we all know what everybody's doing, because
yeah,
the last thing that's going to happen is this deal is going to fall through because I've dropped the ball, or I haven't let you know something, or the mortgage broker didn't. It is so important. But yet I have never had, ever in my career, had a client ask me, how do you communicate the rest? And that just goes to show that they don't understand. They know what they know, but
mm,
they don't know what they don't know. And that relationship, and I know there's realtors out there who don't have, I coach some of them,
yeah,
that
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have relationships. And it's so important. Wouldn't you agree? Like you said,
yeah.
now.
No, no, I agree, and what I found exactly to what you're saying, it's been a lot of places. It still is. When I entered the industry, there was a lot more of it, where it was just you pass the baton on. That's what it was, silos. Where my job is done, now it's somebody else's job, and when they're done, they're gonna pass it to somebody else. And every single time you got a client in, they don't know what to expect on our end. They know what they just went through, but they don't know what's coming what's gonna happen for the rest of the transaction. And if anything goes wrong, what ends up in those situations is everybody's pointing fingers and all this other stuff. And I don't like that at all, because transactions are, especially, like, again, I'm going to say this, like, now are getting difficult. It's difficult sometimes. If you're a buyer, people don't realize that sellers can have negative equity, right? Where you negative equity is where their mortgage is more than what they bought the house for. How do you get around that? What's happening? What solutions can you come to? Or when you're a seller, you find out that the buyer can't get a mortgage approved.
Mhm.
You need all your entire team there, and I feel like it should be a council. It shouldn't just be, hey, there's my realtor, there's my mortgage broker, there's my lawyer. It should be a council that comes together and says, okay, what is the best solution here? What can I do? What can you do? And everybody kind of comes together. Our team, I mean, if we have, like you said, you know what, like, yeah, if you give me a call, I'm definitely picking up. But if I'm not hesitant to call you if there's something going wrong. I could be like, hey, Melissa, like, this is what's going on here. I don't know if, like, we can fix it. Is there an easier way if you can negotiate with the realtor instead of us coming and negotiating with their lawyer? Because that's going to look more aggressive. This may calm everybody down and we can close the transaction. Same thing with a mortgage broker. I know Rob, especially, I've worked with so many times. If there's some kind of condition coming in that I'm like, well, this is a bit too much, can call their team. Hey, listen, like, let's get this condition out. Can you get it out? We've tried to push for it. They said no. Can you do something to help us out so we can close in time? So how everybody works together, I feel like the dynamics are so important, especially in this market, because believe it or not, this market is where I feel like people can make a lot of money, especially
This is where the
and really if
opportunity
they
is. Yeah.
time it. Yeah, like, it's like, what is it? The another quote.
The
What?
confusion. Where there's confusion, there's opportunity. Like
Yeah,
always.
yeah. So if everybody is greedy, you should be fearful. If everybody's fearful, you should be greedy, right? So, and I'm butchering that quote a little bit, but you get what I mean. Right now, everybody's fearful. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to be had, and just you need to be with the right team who's kind of going for it. So having said all of that about the market, I want to kind of jump into some market questions because I want to know, there's like a lot of stuff going on. I know earlier this year, last year, out of nowhere, record unprecedented rate increases. This year we had a pause. Everybody kind of got a little excited. Market kind of moved, then started going up again, and everybody stopped. Then we stopped again in the fall. Market, I don't know where the market is right now. Inflation came in at 3.8%. I think there is a lot of confusion in terms of what to expect. So I'm going to ask you a crystal ball question. Regardless of predicting the future is something that I always like to kind of at least toy around with. Where do you think the market is headed in the next 12 months, 12 to 18 months? Where do you think, if you had to take a guess?
I'm going to answer this the way I would answer a client, and then I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Perfect.
Because this is the problem. Has anyone met the market? Has anyone spoken to the market?
Yeah.
But we sure talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
And we talk about it a lot because that's how it's portrayed on TV. Sorry, but they need to do things that get viewers, right?
Yep.
And what I find in my, as an advisor, because I am a real estate advisor to people, I'm like, this is perpetually changing, this market, more so now than ever, right? I find you got to keep your eye on the target and not so much on the market. What is your outcome? And people get caught up in the now. Okay, like everyone's waiting for the announcement, right? What's going to be the announcement? Let me hear the announcement. And then I'm going to make a decision. Like, boy, oh boy, we're putting a lot of our future into someone we've never met or talked to.
Yep.
So what I like to say is look at what is the outcome that you want? What is it? Is it home ownership? Is it why? And I always say you want to know why, but you don't want to ask why, right? Because if you say why, it's pretty confrontational. But what is the connection to that outcome for you? What does it mean to your family if we do this? Like, what does it mean for plans for your future? And then the market becomes the playing field we're playing in. We want to get there in the best way possible because a lot of people are focusing on the interest rates. Literally everything halts, especially a week or two before the interest rate announcement, right? So let's all listen. Yeah. Very, very few know what it means to them because that's the other challenge. I'm sure you see realtors and other professionals going, oh, the interest rates went up. Yeah, they saw that on the news at noon. Like they get that part. But what does it mean to me as a buyer or as a seller, right now? So, and so that provides the playing field. The market to me is the playing field. I want to focus on this outcome for you. And if now is the right time for a whole bunch of reasons, and sometimes we review that, to be honest, and we're like, maybe now isn't the right time for you, but it's not because of the market per se. It's because of the effect it's going to have on them. Maybe they're going to be able to save more money for a down payment or whatever, right? But the market, when you're buying and selling in the same market, let's remember you're buying and selling in the same market. So it's feeling the same effects. Your buy is feeling the same effects as your sell. So I start getting them to think about what do they need to get out of this sale to get to where they want to go right now. And what does that mean for them? And then it's a big strategy plan at how do we do that? What does that look like? If people are looking, and that comes to your buy or sell, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But so if you're asking me 12 months from now, I could anticipate, if I made an educated guess, if it meant anything to anybody, which I think it should mean less than it does, I think that we're going to see, kind of the same environment for a while. And I think hopefully towards the end of 2024, we're going to start to see but this is what I want to say at the end of 2024. And I ended it with, we're going to see what? Because what is important to you about the market? Like when people ask me, how's the market? I have to say, well, listen, are you buying? Are you selling? Are you investing? Is it because all of those have different answers. And if someone's trying to give you a blanket answer on the market, they're a TV channel. They're not a personalized, what does this mean to you? Right. So I think you need to ask a different question, or I would encourage people to demand a different answer. Like,
Yeah.
what does this mean for me? Because to ask what the market is, boy, I'll tell you, we still have a lot of people buying and selling, some out of need, some out of, job movements, some out of job losses. There's always an underground of buying and selling happening. But for me to give you a valuable answer, I need to know what part of the
Yeah.
market you're curious in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree because people, I mean, for me, my perspective, which I found was interesting, was people are like, oh my God, they're afraid of interest rates and all of that. They weren't afraid when house prices were going up to jump into the market, but somehow they're afraid that the interest rates are going up. When, for example, if you're trading up, trading anywhere, up, down, if you're moving,
Mhm.
if you moved in 2021, by time if you sold first and you bought afterwards, and we're gonna get into a second which one should be doing first, but a lot of people were selling first and then buying afterwards, and so they were selling cheaper. By the time they bought, the price went up. Now, if you sold first and you bought afterwards, you were actually buying a cheaper home. But people psychologically felt like it could go further down. So I got to somehow measure the bottom of the market and make sure that I don't pay a penny above asking. And it gets crazy because, like what you're saying, as soon as the interest rates kind of announced, people are even like just, I would say, I mean, myself included, I'm not an expert in real estate. Yes, I'm associated in the industry, but I'm associated from a very legal perspective, not from the pricing perspective, and I'm
Mhm.
very open about that. So if you were to ask me what the price is going to be, what to do in that sense, I can't give you that kind of knowledge. I don't have that knowledge. I can't give you that advice. So well, people would, I would say, as soon as the interest rate goes up, people are looking at it like they're looking at like Wealth Simple, those apps where they're figuring
Yeah,
out like stock market's going up and down. It went up 5 cents. Like it doesn't really matter to you. Are you going to be buying and selling in the same day? Like you're not going to be. When I say buying, selling same day, I mean like the same house. You're not flipping it in a day. You're flipping it in 5 years, 10 years. Like it's going to be a very different market. If somebody said, you know what, I want to go back 10 years and buy a home, and somebody had the opportunity, there's not a single person who wouldn't take it.
right?
Not a single person who would say they don't care if the prices were going up. They would not care whether they feel like it's going to go further down. They would not care about any of that. They would be like, I'm just going to buy. Just I don't care what house, anywhere, just give it to me 10 years ago. So,
Exactly. And that's why when people focus on the interest rates, I mean, I don't have a international voice on TV, or I certainly would use it, right? Because focusing on the interest rate is like, that is going to change. Look how quickly it's been changing, and it'll change the other way. Everything is cyclical, and people are focusing a big decision that is going to affect how their money can grow for them. And they're choosing not to get in the market because of this interest rate
mm,
right now today. And that's making a permanent decision based on a temporary situation.
yeah,
And once you explain this to people, and I love your analogy, because are you planning, it's going to change again next month. Are you planning to buy this
yeah.
month, sell next month? Because if you are, then yeah, we should be concerned about far more things than the interest rate. But really being able to dissect it, and I think there's so much noise, okay, not from realtors that really understand it, or lawyers or mortgage brokers that understand. There's just so much noise that do have the flashy lights,
Yeah,
that it's very difficult for people to take a breath and look at it from that perspective, right? They're just reactionary, and that's the worst position. It's the weakest position you can be in if you're reacting to the news, the market, the interest rate. We got to have a solid plan. Now,
yeah,
like you said, we may adjust that plan as we go forward, but always with your best interests at heart. We
yeah,
know your outcome, right? Without this, I don't know how realtors do anything, because you have to know what this outcome is, and not just, I want a house on Cherry Street, like there's got to be a
yeah.
reason behind it. But I totally agree with you. Don't make permanent decisions on temporary situations.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, moving to the question kind of I hinted at earlier about buying first or selling first, what can you give guidance to the listeners who are thinking about, and I encourage, I'm going to take a second actually to speak to those listeners who are thinking of getting into the market. I would highly advise to reach out to Melissa's team. Melissa's contact information is going to be below. And so definitely reach out. But I always recommend 6 months to a year before, just have a bit of a conversation. Doesn't have to be something that's highly committal. You're not going to have like a 3-hour strategy session. Even if it's like a 5-minute call to understand where you are, I always advise that, and then kind of plan, as opposed to figure out what you think you need to get. And then when it's time to buy or sell or whatever you want to do, you realize you've been focusing at all the wrong stuff, just like the renovations analogy that you had given earlier.
Yeah, it's so true. I know you're getting to that question, but Rob and I do Zooms. Like, that's one thing we offer with our clients. We have Zoom meetings with myself, Rob, and the client, and we're on there, or the prospect, the person who's interested, right? Yeah. To know, you don't even have to be a client at this point, because Rob as well shares your and my, desire to empower people and teach people exactly what there is to do. And we've had countless people come on there, first of all, not thinking they deserve a meeting. So I don't know what that looks like, because everybody deserves to have the answers. Yeah. But they're like, oh, I can't buy. And we find out they absolutely can buy if they so chose, but they just didn't understand it. And like, to your point, they've been maybe, paying all their credit cards off all at once. And we're showing them there's a better way for you to build your credit. Like, there's lots of different tricks that you just don't know. So sell or buy, is this where we're going?
Yep, sell or buy. So what, depending on, the market right now, what would you suggest? What would be a good strategy for people to consider? Should they be looking at, and I'm looking at, again, for those who are trading up or down, who are not just entering the market, do you think they should be listing it first? Should they consider looking at buying houses, go under contract, and then potentially try to sell their home? What do you think is the best kind of approach in today's market?
So again, I'm going to caution everyone listening. If a realtor tells you blanket, sell first, buy first, you need to interview someone else. Call my number below. But the reason is because listen, it used to be that I could tell you from York region, I could tell you Toronto as a great city, Toronto. This is what it is. It is no longer like that. It isn't even. And then for a while it was neighborhoods, right? We could tell you specific neighborhoods. And I mean, you could be in one neighborhood and it would be a different suggestion that I would give you versus the neighborhood right beside it. Now it's even more specific. It literally is streets. So if you don't have a realtor willing to dig down and tell you, and they should be asking you a ton of questions at that point. When you're asking them, should I buy or sell first? I am guaranteeing you they don't have. I could give you a blanket one right now, which I'm going to, but I can't say it's going to apply to everybody. There's unique properties. There's certain situations. There's, you really need to be asked a lot of questions. And if they're not asking you, find someone who does. Overall is really difficult, because I'll tell you right now in Toronto, I coach a ton of agents in Toronto as well. And right now in Toronto, there are pockets where we are still utilizing the strategy of holding, which the buyers hate, because that's, for anyone listening, that's when they underprice. So this sold over asking, that's the eagle sign. Don't worry about that sign, because honestly, they're under listing. They're pricing it under what they believe the value is to create a flurry and basically give people hope that they can get into this home. Yeah. And it's almost auction-like, right? So like I said, the value is determined by the buyers, what they're willing to pay. And some of them in pockets in Toronto are very successful. So that's going to be different advice for those people. Mostly, though, across the board, if I were forced with a gun to my head, I would be telling you right now, you do not want to buy first. There are challenges generally. And again, this is not for everybody, but there are challenges generally right now. One of them is that people who are selling their properties right now are in that kind of in-between stage, kind of like what you were talking about in COVID, right? Where they have already bought. And now that everything's coming to a halt or a slowdown, they're having difficulty selling their home. So they can't accept, because I would be advising you, if you were purchasing a home before you sold, you want to have that condition that this
Yeah.
is conditional on the sale of your property. Which means if your property doesn't sell, you get out of it. But this guy's already in a fix. And what's happening is the sellers now are not all of them are accepting that condition. They can't because
Yeah.
they're already tied at this other end. But you don't know that as a normal person. You need
Yeah.
someone who's in these transactions all the time to
Yeah.
understand, right, what's happening. There are ways for us to protect you if you list first, because there's two, whatever it's called, challenges I get when I say list first. One is I'm never going to find something I like. I need to find something I love before I sell my house or I'm not moving. Okay. I can't tell you how many times, I don't
Yeah.
know who does this, call it the universe, call it God, call it whatever you want. But always when someone gets their ducks in a row and we're able to get in a plan that is actually movable, I've never had someone homeless. That
Yeah.
house shows up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have clients call me, I was almost homeless, but you're not homeless.
Yeah.
It always comes up. And the second thing they say is what if we sell this, but we just can't find anything, or we
Yeah.
decide not to, because I'm not a genie, right? So we are able to use a seller's accommodation clause. So we can sell your home, but there's a clause we can insist that's in the offer that says this home is conditional on the sellers finding suitable accommodation, and then you add in all
Yeah.
once. Are there risks with it? Yes. Does it reduce your buyer pool? Yes. Because a lot of people want to know that I bought a house. These people have the bottle of champagne but can't uncork it because they bought a house, but it's conditional on if the seller finds a place.
Yeah.
It's not the best, but it's one of the strategies that we talk about that we can use. Not now, I would not recommend it, but previously, a few years ago, they would do this. And instead of putting that clause, these are the guys who like to walk the tightrope.
Yeah.
Instead of putting that clause in, because it would reduce the number of buyers, they would I'm just going to make it a long closing because,
Yeah.
miracles are going to happen.
Yeah.
And no protection. And that probably makes your skin crawl as a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I find that all these conditions is exactly what I kind of advocate, because I don't like things up for chance that hopefully the stars are gonna align and then everything's gonna work out the way I know I've been through enough of life to know that rarely ever happens, and you have so many other things that are going on. There's so many contingencies, so many things that you have to consider, and I feel like again. I'm going to let you continue, but I wanted to bring attention again to the fact that working with the right individual, again, shows you how you can maneuver it, because it's like you're giving a lot of, for example, conditions and a lot of, you could say, plays from your playbook. But at the end of the day, like you said, it matters on the street, the city, every single thing. But also matters on the client, what kind of risk appetite they have. So it's about bringing all of that together and then finding the best play that you can for that individual kind of person. Like, for example, I would be willing to take a risk. I'm not a crazy risk taker. I'd say I'm medium. If you talk to my dad, he's never going to want to take a risk anymore. He's done with the risks. He just wants something safe, right? So depending on who we are, right? My brother is probably further on the riskier end. He's like, you know what? Let's just dive first, figure it out later. So there's depending on all three of us, though we're like the same family. There's going to be different playbooks, even on the same house. The same house could yield different kind of strategies that will be effective for either one of us. Because the other thing that people don't understand is when push comes to shove, how we react under pressure, every client's going to be different. So the play has to incorporate, like, what your strategy has to incorporate what the client is going to be like under pressure, so that they don't kind of panic and then start saying, hey, no, I want to do A, B, and C. This is getting too much for me. And then they're worse off than if they played a different kind of role or different strategy for the buying and the selling. So again, this is why I say you got to look for the right professionals for the advice and for understanding you well. There's a lot of things like you can't align the stars and make it go everything your way, but you can align your situation around you to make it the best it possibly, to have the best outcome given the circumstances now and what's to come.
100%. And
That's I would say overall my perspective on just how people should treat professionals. Like there's no way that you would kind of say, hey, I'm going to do it this way. Like you said, there's no blanket statement that says, hey, I'm going to definitely sell and then buy. It all depends on the person, the property, the team that you have, your risk appetite, the people around you. And that's not something that you can just kind of say, hey, you know what, whatever, I'm going to do whatever I saw on TV. So that's kind of my little spiel. But turning back to kind of your perspective on, I think we were on whether you should buy, sell first. Buying was what was it again? So depending on the situation, you're leaning a little bit more towards selling first, and then you kind of move into the buying. So
yeah.
do you see that? Do you anticipate that changing at all, or do you feel like that is kind of where it's going to be, and that's where it's going to stay for the next 12 to 18 months?
I do anticipate it changing. I things are changing more rapidly in the last few years than they ever have in real estate. And I think that's the other reason why you don't, like, you're going to go on an African safari and drive your own Jeep. Like, you need to know where the pitfalls are. You need to know where the dangers are. And I think it will change. And I think that's why you need a guide, and not just a guide. You need, like us, a team of guides. It is an emotional thing too. And I tell people this and they don't really realize it until they're in it. And it's different stages of emotion. And I don't know, like when you've lost someone or if you've just gotten married and you make these decisions in an emotional state where you're not really using all of the faculties, right? You're based on emotion. I just want one more warning for people, because this is something else we do, which we started doing in COVID right away. And, people get excited, and this is going to be an industry word, but when they get a firm deal, a firm offer means no conditions. Don't care what you have. Don't care what I have. I'm going to buy your house. And what was occurring, we saw it in 2017, actually, a lot. And that's where people were coming in firm. Yeah. But they just wanted to win. And then when it came time and the tides had turned and there were no conditions to protect anyone and everyone was a choo-choo train, one transaction was connected to the next. And what happened is they fell apart like dominoes. So one thing we adopted from that point forward is, like, we tell our sellers, letting them know too, right? Letting them know the anticipation of what's going to happen. We get a firm deal. Well, like yay, like little yay, but we want a letter from their lender, pre-approval. Like we get them to sign an additional form, the form 127, that says they know what they're doing. Like, it's not, but as an individual, when you sell your house and you get a firm offer, you're like, we don't just try to sell houses. We try to close houses. That's our job, to get you where you want to go. Remember that part? You gotta make sure.
No, I 100% agree. I 2017, 2021 was the years of just like firm offers. And I'm like, even the sellers should I felt like, you know what, it was an accomplishment. A lot of people are like, oh my God, this is firm. This means they definitely have to buy. And if they don't, we're going to go get them. Like, well, do you realize how much money it costs to go after somebody? Do you want to spend that stress or do you want to just get on with your life? Right. So when you sell a home, give them some time, let them go to the bank or whatever it is. Even if it's the highest offer, get them approved on the house so that you're not waiting 30 days or whenever. Right. To be like, all right, these guys can't afford the house. Oh, no, I already now have gotten under contract for a new home and I'm not going to be able to sell my previous home. So these things are things that like people don't really they thought like, like exactly what you're saying. Firm is amazing. It's time to party. like, no, it's not time to party because firm is not firm. There's
It
the
makes you get
reality.
more questions right away.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an emotional decision. So they could have emotionally, like, it was exactly what you're saying, where people, I think buyers are going around and they were losing on bid after bid. So now they're like, you know what, I don't care, highest offer firm, I want this house so I can get it. And it was kind of a competition to win, and they were not even sometimes looking at the house. So definitely always want conditions, and smart conditions, not just
Mhm.
burdensome conditions, but smart conditions. Conditions are good. They can be your friend when they're
Yeah.
used correctly.
Yeah, 100%. And you and I both know, and everyone should know this. Just because houses go firm, there are deals all the time
Yeah,
that fall through. And they fall through after you've had the party and the celebration and nobody's watching. And
yeah,
that's the key thing, right? Like that's what the lawyers and the realtors are for. We're watching. Just when you're celebrating and now you're at the pool with all your friends, we're watching. We're keeping up. We're making
yeah.
sure that everything is happening that it should be happening, right?
Yep. Nope. 100%. 100%. Yeah. No, you know what? Thank you for that information. I mean, it was really a pleasure having you on. Lots of valuable insight. Definitely, we're going to have you on again. I want, for my listeners, if you want to contact Melissa, her contact information is going to be below, maybe on the side, depending on where you're listening from. Definitely reach out to her. Definitely, if you are planning, if you're thinking of planning, if you're just toying with the idea, I always say reach out to advisors and trusted advisors to get a good understanding of how you should kind of adjust yourself. It's just like a coach, you know. I could try to teach myself golf or tennis. I'm not going to be really good because once I got the bad habits in, it's going to be really hard to undo. So you need a proper coach because they're going to make my life like so much more easier. Same thing, realtors, you got to get that realtor coach in from the beginning so that they can show you just the tips and the tricks on how to start preparing for whatever it is you have, whether it's buy, sell, or both. So thank you for coming on, Melissa. Any last words before we sign off?
No, I just want people to retain hope and not to sit alone and wonder. And that's, one of the things, reach out. We can have a conversation. Like I'm not here to commit anybody to anything. My whole goal, like I said at the start of this, was to empower people, let them understand that there's options and the value that good, not just realtors, lawyers, teams of professionals that can work together. Because if you find a realtor who does not have a lawyer and or a mortgage broker together with them, then how are they going to be your defense team?
Yeah.
Because it isn't just, if realtors tell you they can do it all, they can't. I can't do my job as well as I can without having someone like Harris on my team.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's
likewise.
all.
Yep.
Mhm.
100%. Nope. Thank you
Okay,
for coming on. It was a
thank you
pleasure
so
talking
much.
to you.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.